Hello there, my name's Jan from JB Crafts and I'm back today with my next tutorial in the series for Technique Tuesday. So this is what we're going to be making today. It's actually using a stencil in a slightly different way to normal, and it's called a reverse stencil technique. So I'm going to show you how I made this, and I've chosen a nice DL slimline card today, and I've used the Distress Oxides on here. I'll show you the products in a second or two, but this is where we're heading. I've just put a very simple greeting inside, just edged it with the pink to match the outside, stamped in the blue, and away we go. So this is what we're going to be doing. So first of all, I'm going to bring in the stencil that I used for this. So if I just pop this one across here, and it's called Love Hearts. It's a 7x7 inch stencil by Crafter's Companion. I've had this in my stash quite a while now, and this is what I'm actually going to be using to create the technique of the reverse stencil. Now, normally with a stencil, you would ink through the design, and I've just popped one together using the colours that I'm going to be using today. And this is the kind of effect that you would normally get traditionally, popping your ink through the stencil. So where all the stencil marks are, you get that beautiful relief of the colour of the background, which in my case was a piece of smooth white cardstock. Now we're going to do the same today, but I'm going to lay the colour down first, and then we're going to ink through the stencil with a different colour so that you get that relief in the background using the colours of your choice. Now this can be inks. You could actually put a piece of pattern paper in the background and do this technique. So yeah, different ways of doing it, but you know how much I love my inks. So we're actually going to be using some Distress Oxide inks today. So I'll just bring these in. I've chosen 3 shades of pink. So I have got Sponge Sugar, I've got Kitsch Flamingo and Picked Raspberry, and I have my little blending brushes at the ready, one for each of those shades of pink. Now again, excuse the sniffling, I have had the worst cold this week, I do apologise. As far as choosing colours are concerned, I get asked a lot about how do you decide on what colours, and I must admit this has been invaluable to me, and it's not my own design. I actually downloaded this from Lou Collins' website. Some of you may know Lou from working alongside Craft Stash, and she's got this available to download, and I've just tweaked it to suit my own needs. And what it is, it's a little swatch chart. So just taken the time to swatch out all my Distress Oxide inks on the cardstock that I normally use, which is a smooth white cardstock, so that I can see the colours. And what it does, I've actually put mine in the same order as the Ranger colour chart for these particular inks. And what it does is it groups colours. So you can see here we've got very much that kind of candy floss baby pink kind of tone, as opposed to the next set, which are more of what I call a salmony pink. So it shows you which ones work together nicely, and I've done this for most of my colours. I do have an odd colour missing, which I've yet to add to my collection, but it's a really nice way to go through and decide which ones you want to work with. So yeah, I've got all those ready, and that's why I decided upon those 3 shades of pink today. So we'll put that to one side, and we're going to get ready to start with our inking. The first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of smooth white cardstock, and this is actually bigger than the finished piece. I always tend to work when I'm stenciling on something slightly larger and then cut it down to size. So let's bring in the bits and pieces that we need. I'm actually going to bring in my magnetic mat. I like to work on this when I'm doing my inking and stenciling. It just gives me a basis to work on. So the first thing I'm going to do is apply some ink to the actual card itself. So all I'm going to do is take this into place just so that it doesn't wriggle about, and the magnetic part will come in when we start with the stencil, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to tape this down onto my mat. And then we're going to take the brushes, and I'm going to start with the lightest shade, which is the Spun Sugar. So we'll just pop that one out of the way for a second. Take that lid off there, load up my brush. And what I want to do is work roughly in thirds. So if I just use the stencil here like I said, the piece of card is larger than what I need, so I need to make sure that I'm sort of working within the boundaries of the stencil, and then just by eye I'm just going to divide that roughly into thirds. Popped a little tiny pencil mark so that I can bring in my 3 shades of colour. So the first one at the top is that lightest, and all we're going to do is literally build up a bank of colour across this cardstock. So again, this is a smooth white cardstock that I prefer to do my blending on, and the oxides are just so easy to blend. You could do this with any of your blending inks. It doesn't have to be Distress Oxide. These are just my inks of choice. I do love working with these. They're such a lovely colour palette and they're so easy to work with. So again, just taking that ink and blending it onto that piece of card, layering up the depth of colour. You know, the more ink you add, the more depth of colour, and we do want a decent depth to show through for that technique in the end. So that's my first colour layer down, nice and smooth, and then we're going to move on to the second one. So that one was Spun Sugar. We're then going to go to the next shade, which is Kitsch Flamingo. So again, I'm just going to do the same again. I'm going to load up my little brush and I'm going to come down into that second area. So I'm going to start at the bottom, just build up again exactly the same, and fill in the gap there, working up towards that lighter shade. So we're just going to add this, almost sort of touching the bottom of that lighter shade, and then we'll do a little bit of blending in between to get that nice blend between the 2 shades. So just add sufficient colour to get a nice coverage. This is one of my favourite pinks, I must admit, the Warm Lipstick. Oh, sorry, not Warm Lipstick, it's Kitsch Flamingo, isn't it? There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop back to my lighter brush. I'm not going to put any more ink on it, but I am just going to work on that join and blend the 2 into each other like so. And then we're going to take the third one, which is our Picked Raspberry. So just getting a little bit deeper, but still that same tone of pink. And again, I'm going to come down to that bottom layer, and I've just left enough room on the card that I can hang on to it there so that it's not slipping around too much. So a much stronger pink, this one. And again, just bring it up to that section where we've done the mid-tone. Just make sure you've got a nice even coverage there. And you could do this in any colours. I just chose the pink mainly because I'd got the Love Heart stencil, but this would look nice in any colour. So again, we've got that nice coverage there, and then I'm going to go back to my mid-tone brush, pop the ink away there, and then we're just going to work on that blend again in between here so that we've got that nice seamless blend. So we've got our nice ombre style going on there. So we'll move the brushes out of the way. And that's good to go for the next part of my technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tidy up the edge of the mat a little bit. We're just going to grab a white there and just tidy up the edge of that in an attempt to stay nice and clean and not get it all over my my fingers. There we go. And then we're going to bring the stencil in now. So again, I want to lay this over the colour now and position it where you want it to go. And again, I'm going to take this down just at the top so that I've got that hinge to check as I go along. So again, I'm just going to use the edge of the stencil there and tape it onto my piece of card. And then the reason I've used my magnetic mat is I've got some little tiny magnets here. And I'm just going to use those to anchor it. got everything in place. So what you want now is quite a dark colour to go over the top to get that reverse technique. Now I didn't want to go totally black, I actually wanted to do pink and navy. So I've actually reverted to my Harmony inks by Spectrum Noir here. These are the water reactive inks. And the navy one, the Midnight, was a little bit more blue than I would have actually wanted. So then it was time to add some black to it just to get it a wee bit darker. Now then, I'm just looking for I've lost my little mat. I don't know what I've done with it. So we'll have to improvise. I thought I'd got that out ready, but it's evading me at the minute. I've got that many things up here ready to film. I'm not quite sure what I've done with it. So we'll just move on and we'll improvise. Just bear with me a second. I have got a second one. Let me just grab that. There we go. Just to put the ink blending on and save my my work surface. So we'll pop this to one side now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the water reactive inks, and I'm just going to squidge quite a bit of ink out onto here. So this is the Midnight, which is a really nice dark navy, but it wasn't quite as dark as I wanted it. So I'm going to add some of the jet black as well, and we're going to mix the two together. Now, instead of the blending brushes for this, I'm going to go back to the original sponge applicators, and I've just dedicated one particularly for this colour because it is a mixture of inks. So what we're going to do then is we're going to take some of the blue and just mix it with the black to get a nice deeper shade. And again, then we're going to bring it onto here, and I'm just going to grab a little piece of tape, stick it to my fingers so that I can hold here, and again, A, reduce the mess, and B, not lift any colour with my fingers. So again, nice and gently. And I don't mind if I go over the top of the stencil because we're going to cut this down to fit the design that we're making. So again, you just want a really nice coverage over the top. So again, once we've done that, I can move these up a little bit. I can pick up a bit more ink, mix it with that black, and we're going to move down the stencil just nice and carefully, just pushing that through into the stencil there to get that lovely coverage over the top. And you might think, well, she's gone bonkers because now we've covered up all the pink that I spent all the time blending. But trust me, you're going to see a little bit of that when we start and lift the stencil. So again, last bit of ink off here, mix it together with the black, tap it off a little bit, and just finish off that last section. So we've got that nice dark navy. So don't be afraid to mix your colours. If you add black to any colour, it'll take that shade a bit darker. If you add white to it, obviously it will lighten it. Okay, so we've got nice coverage, and then I'm just going to go back over the whole thing just to lift a little bit of the ink off the stencil, and I'm quite happy with how that looks. So away can go the tape. I will move that one out of the way so that we don't get covered in ink. And then we've got the reveal. So my little magnets can go back onto my magnetic strip over here at this side. And then we're just going to lift that stencil. And you can see here where we've got the reveal now. Okay, so I'm just going to take that off the top. I'm not too worried if it damages my card because we're not going to use that piece of it. Okay, so you can see now we've got that beautiful technique. So the pink is showing through the background, and then you've got the darker colour over the top. So this could be black, it could be the navy blue, depending on your colour tones. If you'd got some sort of maybe the oranges and yellows, the brown would look nice over the top of it. You could do a grey over the top of it. Lots of different ways to do this. So I'm going to release my card from the mat now. That's done its job. And then we've got this piece to work with. Move the mat out of the way. I think I've done pretty well in not getting covered in ink today, which I usually end up being. And this is the bit that we've got to work with now. Now I've got a little bit of splodginess going on at the top here. I had previously cleaned my stencil from when I did this bit, so I'm guessing it was maybe still a bit damp. You can see how crisp this one was, so maybe it was a little bit damp under there, but I am going to cut this down to the size that I want to work with. Did get a little bit of ink, but not too bad there compared to what I look like sometimes. My motto was always, if you're not covered in ink by the end of the day, then you've not had a good crafty day, but I do try my best to stay clean. Right, so what we need to do next then is we need to get this to a size to work on our project. So I'm just going to leave that ink to set for a second or two so that I don't have to get out my heat tool. You can assist the drying with your heat tool if you wish, but by the time we've talked about the next bit, it should be good to go. So we'll put that on one side, and I'm going to bring in the layers that I'm going to be working with. So my DL card, I've actually made this out of my smooth cardstock. It's exactly the same cardstock as what I work on for the inking. And it is 8 1/4 inches here in the UK. So I've just cut it 8 1/4 by 8 1/4 square, and then scored it at 4 1/8 to give me that sizing. So DL stands for double the length. So whatever the width is, it should be double on the length. So we'll give that a little burnish just to secure that fold. Okay. And then I've got a couple of mats and layers. So I brought in the pink and the navy to echo the inking that we'd already done. So the navy piece, I've just come down a fraction to give me a nice border around the outside of it there. And that is going to be 7 7/8 by 3 3/4 inches. And this one's going to stick directly to the card. We'll do that in a second. And then my pink layer, again, I've just been through my card stash and just chosen some colours that matched. This is going to come down a fraction again, and I do like that there are slightly different width borders here. So the white card is slightly, the border here is slightly wider than this one. And I've come down to 7 5/8 by 3 1/2 inches on this one. Now, I'm not going to stick them all together yet. We're going to work on this one first. I will stick this one down so that we've got this one out of the way, and then I can pop it to one side. So I'm just going to bring in my tape runner and add some adhesive all the way around the edge. And we can pop this one in and pop it to one side, ready to go. So that's that one. And this is going to go straight onto the card front with that nice little border all the way around there. There we go. Give that a press in place, and then I can just pop that to one side for a second while we start working on the next layer. So that one can go over there. And then what I want to do is bring in my trimmer and cut this one down to size now. So what I want to do is make it the right size to fit on my mat layer. So we were actually at 7 5/8 here and 3 1/2. So I am literally just going to come down by 1/8 of an inch and trim this into shape. So I'm going to take a little bit off this side where it's a bit blotchy, I think. And this is where it comes in handy because you can decide which part of it. That's why I always work on something a bit bigger. So I want 3 3/8. Okay, which is just on that join there. It would be, wouldn't it? There we go. And I'm going to take that bit off that side, and that'll get rid of some of that where it was a wee bit blotchy. Okay, now you could save this for another project. You could have a nice little strip of that as an accent on another project. That would go in the bit bag. And then what I'm going to do is I don't want the base of the stencil here. So I'm going to cut it level with the bottom of the pattern on both sides. So I'm just going to line that up in my trimmer here and take off that excess card. So we've got a little bit there. And then it wants to be 6 1/2 inches, which is there, and that should take off the bottom piece. Now then, the next bit that I discovered when I started doing this was that because this was only a 7-inch piece of cardstock for the stencil, it wasn't quite long enough for what I wanted to work with. Bearing in mind we've got 7 5/8 here. So the easiest way to deal with that, and you know how much, any of you that have followed me for a while know how much I love chopping things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cut in here and stretch the actual stencil. So let me just double check on here at what point I actually did that. I made this piece at the bottom was 2.5 inches. It doesn't really matter where you cut it, but I'm just going to do it the same. So what I'm going to do is line this up at 2.5 inches here, and I'm just going to put a cut through the center so that we've actually stretched it. And that's all I need my trimmer for. We can pop that one away now. Make sure that doesn't slide over. And what I've done is I've actually made it now so that we can use this at the top and this at the bottom. And then you can actually leave it with the band in the middle, but I cut a little bit more of the pink, and I'm just going to bring it so that it's all nice and even. So I've not got that dip in the middle, and we're going to stick all these down. So we'll just turn this one over and add some adhesive. And we're going to do, it's got a very, very tiny pink border here. So this one, let me just make sure I'm on the right side. It's got a slight bit of texture on this here. And again, it's just got a very, very narrow, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch all the way around here. We're going to do the same with that bottom section. And we're going to add that onto the bottom. Just make sure that everything's going in the same orientation, and this one's going to go down here. And I know now that I've got that pink piece to sit in the middle, so that one's going to go there. Just going to make sure we've got the right gap. Perfect. And then again a little bit of my adhesive on that one, and I'm just going to slot that in the middle so that as I said, at the moment there's a slight dip here. So I just wanted it all to be level. So I'm literally going to put that piece back in the center there so that I've got a nice even spread. So you can see how we've stretched it and it's become part of the design feature. So the final thing to do to this was just to create a sentiment. And what I've done is I've grabbed, and this is quite an old set from Crafter's Companion. These were actually the fancy font dies. Some of you may have them in your stash, and you get a beautiful focal word in the die, and then lots and lots of little sentiments to go with it, so you can make up your own. So you could have "You make me happy," you could have "Sending happy thoughts." There's lots of different ways. I've actually chosen the "You make my heart happy," and I've cut those out ready. Got those in my little box here. I'll take those out. I've got a little heart sentiment here, and I have got a few gems, of course. So what I want to do is I wanted to pop this on here, and just to lift it slightly and add to the design, I'm going to bring in, you know how much I love the vellum. I was using it the other day, and again I've done that torn edge on it, but this is what it would look like straight onto the card. But just to actually focus your eye on that sentiment, I'm going to wrap the vellum around here and then drop that sentiment over the top, so it just lifts it a fraction. So we'll do that first. So I'm just going to position this so that it's slightly wider than the piece that I put in the middle, and it sort of makes a focal point here now, instead of it being, oh, the piece of cardstock wasn't big enough. So we're going to stick this tied down with a little bit of tape, and then just wrap it, get it into position, and just wrap it round this side as well. Take that one down, and then we've got our panel good to go on the card. So I think the next thing we'll do is actually pop this onto the card. So I'm going to stick with this one flat. My sample that I made, I actually rose on a little piece of foam tape, but I think I'm going to keep this one flat today. And again, I'm going to continue with that tape runner. Just make sure we've got adhesive all the way down that back panel, put a little bit over here just to secure the vellum, and then we can add this one to our card blank that we've got the matte layer on ready. So again, just make sure that that's central, and once we're happy we can commit to that. And then I'm going to bring in my tacky glue here that's got the fine nozzle on, just to apply a little bit of glue. I don't need a lot, just need some tiny little dots of glue on the back of here to secure it. So we're going to go, the little doggo's here, the tip tapping's back. Her daddy's just gone out, so here she comes. She doesn't like to be on her own. So again, just a few little tiny dots. It doesn't need a lot to secure this down. I'm just dotting it round, and then this will be sufficient to adhere it to the front of the card. Now, just so that those little dots don't squidge out, I've actually got my my cloth here to the side, and what I'm going to do is just tap off a bit of that excess glue, just so that it doesn't squidge out on the sides, and then we can decide whereabouts we want this to sit. And I'm sort of going to go for roughly centre there and get that one stuck down. And then I tend to bring in, rather than pressing it with my fingers, tend to bring in my block. I've got a nice flat surface then, and you can apply a little bit of pressure. And then I stamped out the You Make My Heart, which was from that same set. And I've just made a little word banner with that one. And I've got some tape on the back of here ready. So we're just going to take the liner off here. And then this one's good to go. And I'm going to position this one just towards the top here, and I'm going to overlap, which will help to just sort of secure the vellum a little tiny bit. But I just want this to sit above there like that. Okay. And then I've just cut out a little tiny heart, and the reason I did this on my sample was I'd got a very blotchy bit under here, so I thought, right, it's all about hearts. We've discussed it in the sentiment, we've used it in here, just added. And again, I've picked a scrap of card that matched that darkish shade, and this one actually went over where I'd got the blotchy bit. So because those blotchy bits are up at this side, I think I might just sort of pop this one up here. You know, embellishments are great for covering up little imperfections. So, you know, whether it's a button or a butterfly or a flower, in this case I've kept the heart theme going. Yeah, it's a great way of just covering up any kind of little imperfection that you don't want. So whereas this has got quite a bit of blotchiness going on, just by adding this in here, it's sort of concealing it a little bit. It's not covering all of it up, but I'm happy with that. And then just to finish off, as always, I've got some little tiny gems, and we're going to pop one on the heart itself, and then we're going to pop a couple here and one at the edge, just to finish off. So we're going to go with a nice navy blue one to pick out that background colour, and then I've got navy again here, a sort of deeper pink, and a pale pink. I think they will look fine. So we'll just leave those to dry for a second. And that's the main part of the card done. I have just made the inside bit again. I do like to decorate the inside. So this piece is actually the same size as the blue background, which was 7 7/8 by 3 3/4. And all I've done is I've just gone round the edge of it with a little bit of the pink ink. I've stamped in my Midnight quick dry ink, so I've got a nice sentiment, and then just a tiny little this was just a punch that I've got in my stash, and I've just sort of, again, just to link it all together. And then all we're going to do finally is pop that one on the inside. So we're going to pop some adhesive again. Oops, I think my tape pen's getting towards the end again. On here, and then we can add that one to the inside, and then I think we're just about there. So yeah, I hope you give this one a try. I know a lot of you tried the last technique, which was the fractured card, and I have got another version of that to come up in future weeks, where you can actually take that on to another kind of level. So thank you to those of you that keep sending me your photos. I love to see what you've been doing. And if you want to do that, if you do have a go at any of the designs and you want to do that, you can add them at my Facebook page, which is also JB Crafts. You can find me on Facebook, and that's where a lot of you have actually been popping your photos and things in there. So thank you for that. So you can see there now, we've got that design almost there. Just going to give that another nice crease, and we've got that beautiful reverse stencil technique. So I hope you enjoyed this one today. I think this is the third one in my Technique Tuesday now, and I've got lots of ideas lined up for this to keep it going. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you back here very, very soon. Bye bye now.